Hey everyone, it's Nerviews, and this review has spoilers for this issue of Monsters, Gang Wars, The Man Behind the Mask, What About Tomorrow, Splinter Forever, Farewell, Father's Day, and the Turtles Forever TV movie. If you want to skip past those spoilers, I will have timestamps in the description. The TMNT 40th Anniversary Comic Celebration has standout tells, but also has stories that have tonal issues, unresolved additions to current iterations, and designs that can be confusing. The first Mirage story could have been renamed Alone, since it follows the Edgar Allan Poe poem. The first Mirage story is only 4 pages and tells a simple story. The last page reveals the last Ronin in his gear. Those unfamiliar with The Last Ronin will have more questions than answers, such as, is that who I think it is? And, why does he have his brother's stuff on? If its purpose was to advertise The Last Ronin, it did alright, but those who don't know who it was, it'll leave them with more questions than answers. Monsters was a bit better than the first story, but not by a lot. It had a more horror and fear theme to it, with dark character silhouettes and characters suggesting of offing a kid to a pack of rats. Yet the kid didn't need to be afraid of the TMNT, but maybe he was too young to understand. Gang Wars I didn't like as much as I could because it was more of a message than a story. It also leaned into covering the various iterations and versions of the TMNT and having hope for the next iteration. But Rise already has a comic in this issue, and they managed to make Franken Forehead Rise Dawn even uglier in this comic. I mean, seriously, look at him. I also thought it would elaborate on where the Purple Dragon's leader went and who the masked vigilante is. Those familiar with the TMNT know who the masked vigilante is, but new readers might not. I was expecting a short investigative story, but didn't expect it to turn into a message about hoping about future iterations. And there might be someone insane out there like, every iteration of the TMT is perfect. There is nothing wrong with any of them. If you could not tell, that was a joke. If you're not liking what you're hearing so far before this stupid joke, I suggest you skip this story in this issue, since I've rated it the lowest out of all of them. The Downtime story had more questions than answers, such as in the first Mirage story in this issue. But these questions didn't get me intrigued enough in the urban legend storyline. The Man Behind the Mask was a pretty nice story and seemed to have a more serious tone to the 1987 series. This also did not have the same way they met Casey in this story compared to this series. What About Tomorrow is a one-shot story set in the Saturday Morning Adventure series, and it was one of my highest rated stories in this issue. The story has bad humor, puns, but captures the spirit of the show. Bad jokes and comments range from taking down Shredder to remarking the wrong villain breaking out and another TMNT brother giving them that, "Are you serious?" look. The story is bite-sized, likable, and has the spirit and humor of the show. The Splinter Forever added more to the 2003 show, but again it had more questions and answers in the end of the story. My memory isn't brushed up on the 2003 lore, but I believe they defeated one version of Shredder in Turtles Forever through a laser. So what is this one? It has Mutant Hun in it, so does it take place after the movie, during, or before? I am confusion or don't remember. The 2012 themed Kraang Forever again provides more questions than answers, with a new art style for this series' comic. It somewhat keeps the horror elements, such as a reveal in the story, and the humor such as Mikey's stance-off and Raph's comments, and isn't conclusive but a tad better than Splinter Forever. I don't really care much for Rise, but this farewell comic was better than the previous story and gives more action, humor, designs to familiar characters, lore, and interactions and closure between past and present Leo. Not sure if this was intentional or not, but Rise Leo straight up looks like he was whipped right from the Good Dinosaur while time traveling. I mean, look at his goofy, fat-headed ass. This story has reveals of masked characters and additional siblings I didn't care for, but if you're into Rise, you might find these reveals expected and shocking. Rise itself was a mixed bag for me, and I don't expect my feelings will change when I review the series for this channel. Don't expect me to be happy about doing that. The next Father's Day story was a little bit better than Rise, but that isn't hard for a TMNT iteration to be above Rise. I didn't have many problems with this story other than a turtle I didn't know showing up, and that will be a part of a talking point in an upcoming story review. Father's Day was a nice story about remembrance of a father figure, with characters in the TMNT themselves visiting and honoring their father or other figure in their lives in their different ways. The best of the stories I've rated was last and was titled Teen Spirit, but it wasn't perfect. It was still an entertaining and amusing story with some character confusion. There's red, orange, purple, blue, and yellow bandanas. Oof. Oof, because it could be confusing by which turtle is speaking and what their gender is if they only differentiate them between different but familiar toned bandana/mask and some other subtle features. A 1987 Mikey's bandana sometimes even look yellow at times, and there are different colors of the rainbow that can stand out as girly, like maybe light green? And that is just a suggestion since I am not a designer. So, if I was gonna say this like a fan, this comic celebration was certainly a celebration, but not a celebration, if you know what I mean. I'm sorry, I saw the opportunity and I took it. The TMNT 40th Anniversary Comic Celebration has standout tales, but also has stories that have tonal issues, unresolved additions to current iterations, and designs that can be confusing. I would understand if some people want to flip through the pages to get to the specific iteration they wanted to see the story of. This is why now I'm going to rate all the stories individually, and the overall score will be at the end in the order of this issue. Mirage Story 1, or the 4-page comic, I rated a 75 out of 100. Monsters' fear-themed dark design story got a 78 out of 100. Gang Wars was the lowest rated, with a 67 out of 100. It just looked like that story was going one way, and then it switched into a message about the different iterations. Downtime bumped it back up with a 75 out of 100 for the story that didn't intrigue me into the urban legends. The Man Behind the Mask had a serious-toned 1987-like look with a 78 out of 100. What about tomorrow? The Saturday morning adventures slice was my second favorite story with an 85 out of 100. Splinter Forever, 2003 theme story, added more, but only had more questions with it and scored a 73 out of 100. 2012's Kraang Forever story shared some of the show's themes, humor, added more lore, but with more unresolved questions, with a score of a 75 out of 100. Rise's farewell comic adds more designs, lore, reveals, interactions, humor, but sets up something I couldn't care much for, and gets a 78 out of 100. IDW's Father's Day is a nice, sad, and peaceful remembrance of an important figure in the IDW timeline with a score of an 80 out of 100. It looks like the best was saved for last. IDW's Teen Spirit wasn't perfect in designs and could lead to some character confusion, but was still amusing and entertaining story at the top with a score of an 87 out of 100. That is my opinion of what I enjoyed and didn't enjoy about this issue. Father's Day and Teen Spirits' ratings were such a bump up in enjoying one story over the other. I'll have to rate the number between those two last stories though. The TMNT 40th Anniversary Comic Celebration gets an 83 out of 100. And that's my rolling, since I'm not rating it by the final comic score, but the number in between the last and previous to last story. And since the ratings were all over the place for each story in this issue, I had to do that. My next TV review on this channel will be Paramount Plus's Tales of the TMNT. And since it debuted with a somewhat underwhelming theme song without a roll call, along with my thoughts on Mutant Mayhem, especially on how they handled the rush ending and missed some character traits, the show has a lot to make up for, and hopefully I can expect that. I'm speaking of hope again for the iterations, just like the Gang Wars comic. Someone send help, please! I'm thinking of hope for the iterations, and I didn't like them switching tones and talking about hope for the iterations, like in the Gang Wars story. That's the lowest I've rated in this issue. Help! Just kidding, that was a bit. What isn't a bit is that my Creator Nerd Creative, Nerby Games Gaming, and my Nerdware product reviews channels all have some sort of TMNT content on them. Links to those channels and my support pages will be in the description. Anything else related to this channel will be displayed on this end screen.